Hello everyone, welcome to Friday Night Live. Right, I hope you're all sitting comfortably because we've got a load of questions today, quite a lot of them. So I hope you've all been to the bathroom and got your cups of tea ready. I'll plod straight on with them. So the first one, how long does it take for the tiredness and headaches to stop? So there's actually, I did a timeline and it's on the website, alcoholexplained.com, and it's how long does it take you to feel better after you stop drinking? Okay, and what that does, it's not the psychological aspect, of course, but it goes through the physiological aspect. And essentially, where the tiredness and headaches come from, so obviously, going back to the basic physiological aspect, the brain works by way of a sort of a delicate chemical balancing act, and alcohol is a depressant, is a sedative. So your brain tries to counter it by increasing the stimulant side of things. So when the alcohol wears off, you're left overly stimulated, and that's why people wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, and why you get anxiety after you've been drinking, that kind of anxious feeling. So what happens is, so when you stop drinking, you've essentially got four main stages to go through. Obviously, the alcohol has to leave your system. And then after that, you've got the overstimulation phase, and that really is the worst part. That's when it kicks in with the the anxiety and restlessness, and in worst cases, you've been drinking more for longer periods, full-blown depression, and that's really the very unpleasant part of it. But after a few days, that sort of tails off. But the problem is, if you've been a regular drinker, the stimulants, the overstimulation has been there almost constantly since you started drinking, because it takes a day or two for that overstimulation to disappear. Okay, so if you're drinking regularly, you're constantly overly stimulated. So your brain's stimulating to try and counteract the depressant, sedative effects of the alcohol. And then you're drinking to try and counteract that increased anxiety from it. So it's just that constant, it's like a tiger chasing its own tail the whole time. When you finally cut that out, because your brain no longer needs to create that extra stimulation, you suddenly feel really drained and tired. It's the equivalent of if you're drinking like 7 or 8 strong cups of coffee every day and you suddenly cut it out, you feel really drained and tired and woolly-headed. So not everyone gets that tiredness and headaches. It's only for the regular drinkers. If you're a binge drinker, you just will totally escape this phase. It's hard to put a time frame on it. I don't know anyone that's had it for more than 3 weeks. And that was someone who was drinking a lot and for a very long time. And I'm talking decades here. Most people, it's a week or two. And it is worth riding it out, because when you come out the other side of it, how often most people come out of it, they just wake up one morning and they just feel different. And again, all that's happened is their brain has just, the alcohol's gone, the overstimulation has gone, and it's finally kind of gone back onto a decent balance. And that's where you wake up thinking, oh my God, I feel really good. And that's really the secret of sobriety. That's what I'm trying to sort of emphasise to everyone. When you get to that stage, you feel better than you ever did when you were drinking. Forget the hangovers. I'm talking when you're actually sat down having a drink, what you supposedly get, this great pleasure for all the misery and heartache you put into it. And it's not as good as feeling as just waking up feeling refreshed and ready to go. So I would say probably you're looking at about 3 weeks maximum. But funnily enough, someone put a comment on this and they said, in my personal experience, no more than a week. The other thing, in my opinion, is diet. I see a lot of people post that they've quit for a month or two and still have these effects. And it makes me wonder if they're still eating all the sugar and junk food they were eating while drinking. See, that again is an excellent point, because alcohol isn't the only thing that can affect sleep. And again, on the website, I think, or maybe I didn't anyway, I think that on there somewhere is sort of a list of ways you can try and improve sleep. Now, alcohol's the main one, but of course nicotine and caffeine are stimulants. So if you're drinking lots of coffee or tea late into the day, that will affect your diet. But one of the biggest things that people don't realise is eating big heavy meals really interferes with your sleep. So when you eat something, I think it's something like 14 foot of digestive tract that the food needs to work through, and it's every foot of that has muscles that are squeezing the food through. So when you eat, your body has to put a huge amount of energy into digestion, and although you feel sleepy when you eat a lot, you may be sort of sat down not doing anything, but inside there's a huge amount going on. And of course, as the food is digested, this creates heat and movement and all the rest of it. So if you're eating a lot, particularly late at night, that will damage your sleep. You won't be going through the sleeping patterns because of all this stuff that's going on inside you. So that's definitely worth mentioning. And I think, of course, there is a tendency when people quit drinking, they tend to sort of eat a lot, and that's fine in the short term. You know, you've cut out drinking, that's a massive thing to do, and it's really good for you, so you can cut yourself a bit of slack with diet, and I would say that's absolutely fine. But what you don't want to do is let that damage the joy of sobriety, as it were, because, as I say, that feeling of having a good night's sleep is really one of the best benefits of stopping drinking, certainly for me. So do pay attention to your diet as well, caffeine levels, all the rest of it. The other thing, of course, that will help you sleep is a bit of exercise, but caveat that, try and exercise earlier in the day, because when you exercise, your brain kicks in with adrenaline and oxygen. It makes you feel awake. So ideally, exercise first thing in the morning, and again, because you're tired and you've had that boost, hopefully that will help you sleep as well. The next question is an interesting one because it's less to do with the effect of alcohol on people, and it says, I wanted to ask, why is it that alcohol is so accepted by governments? I know that people argue that it brings a country in so much revenue, but apparently the actual cost of the country through healthcare and crime is higher than what it brings in. I know you mentioned it's cheap to produce, but then I guess so is tobacco. I know a part of it must be the fact alcohol has been around since medieval days, or even before that, I think, but there's a niggling part of me that thinks there must be something else to it. Is it just the alcohol PR machine is just so powerful it has the upper hand over governments? This is sort of an opinion thing, and people will tell you all different things. For me, how I see it is, it has been around forever. So banning it is slightly different because it's been around for so long. But actually, I think it's a bit more complicated than that, because look at the lesson of prohibition in America. If you ban something, you've got to police that. And if you've got a situation where 87% of the population drink, which we do, then in banning something, you don't actually stop people drinking it. What you encourage is actually smuggling and moonshine, which brings additional problems because the quality of alcohol is probably, I don't know, we're talking about a poison, but I forget what, a few years ago in England here, there was some counterfeit vodka or something that people were selling, and it was getting into off license, but people were going blind for a few days from drinking it. God knows what was in it. But this is the problem. If you make something illegal, you've got to police it, and if you push it underground, all you really do, and obviously this is what happened in the 1930s in the US, you just give a lot of power to the criminals. So there is that aspect to it. And don't forget, in the UK and the US, it's a massive part of our culture. You can't just... So if you banned alcohol today, think of the amount of people that would be out of work. And I know this is, balancing up against all the damage it does, but this is a real issue for governments. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people work in the alcohol industry, and it would just suddenly wipe it out. So it is a more difficult question. I know it's an easy thing to just say, well, it's the alcohol companies that are sort of pushing it. But I genuinely think it's a bit more complicated than that. I'm probably not the right person to talk about it, to be honest, because I'm sure there's a lot more to it than this, and this isn't particularly my area of expertise. But yeah, so for me, it's that it's been around for so long. It is so prevalent in society. You're not talking about something that only 10% of people do. You're talking about something that 80% of people do. And there's this whole element of how are you going to police this? You'd need more policemen, you need everything. So I think it's just too much. And of course, don't forget as well, if 80% of people are doing it, who's going to vote a government in that would ban alcohol? because people who drink want to keep drinking. So best case, you're only going to get, say, 20% of the population even considering banning it. So I don't think it's ever going to happen anytime soon. The next question is, how can you change your mindset so that it actually sticks and you finally have no need for alcohol in your life? This really is the $1 million question, because, okay, so we've talked about the physical side of it, but the physical side, you can get through the physical side, and if it is really serious for you, you can get medication to get you over the withdrawals. The problem is not the physical side, it's the fact that people have very deeply held beliefs that they need alcohol to cope with and enjoy life. So the key to reversing that is to change those beliefs. So really that's what Alcohol Explained and Alcohol Explained 2 are about, and every single other book out there on quitting drinking. So it's not an easy thing to go into, but what I would say is you need to do the work on it. Okay, you can't just sit there and expect it to happen. So firstly, how do you change your mindset? Well, what is your mindset? What's causing you the problem? Are you thinking about sitting in the garden with a drink? Are you thinking about Christmas? Are you thinking about going on holiday? Are you thinking about socialising with your friends? You need to look at, because everyone's view of it in a way is uniform, but on the other hand is deeply personal to them. So you need to put the work in. You need to sit there and think to yourself, right, I don't really want to go on holiday without drinking. Why is that? What is alcohol actually giving me? Okay, it's a foul-tasting, sugary poison that makes you feel slightly tired and then makes you feel anxious, and then ruins your sleep. So you need to do that homework. You need to really go in. And as I say, the books are there to help you do that, because the thing you do have on your side is the truth here, because genuinely alcohol doesn't give much at all. And it takes such a massive amount. And I'm not just talking about waking up hungover, but even in the evening, if you watch drinkers, they're happy for the first half hour or so, and then they start to become maudlin and aggressive, and certainly no happier than the non-drinkers. You need to put the work in and start seeing it as it really is. And it is difficult because you're constantly being bombarded with images of laughing, happy drinkers and people socialising with alcohol. But you need to remove that. You need to start working yourself on it. And as I say, you need to just sit down and think, what situation would I want to drink in? And then start really digging into it and trying to analyse it. Because when you do analyse it very simply and see what alcohol provides compared to what it takes, you're way better off without it. And I actually derive great pleasure now. So, for example, going on holiday, and we always go all-inclusive, so you always turn up and there's people sat around drinking all day, and I just feel hugely grateful that I'm not one of them, because I suppose I've just done all the work and I see it as it is. I see like just a foul, sugary poison that just makes you feel tired. And the only real benefit to it is that it anaesthetises the anxiety that it caused previously, and also anaesthetises the tiredness, because you've probably been up half the night before, not sleeping properly. So you really need to go into it, but it's a personal thing for you. So as I say, the books are there to kind of give you guidance, and also I think in Alcohol Explained 2 I go into quite a lot of specific idyllic drinking situations like concerts and holidays and Christmas, and try and break them down. But I can't get everything for everyone. You need to do that work yourself. Someone said if you can squeeze another one in, I was wondering about the brown flower cabinet in the back. Is it a brown flower? Looks like it's a tree. Anyway, it's filled with rubbish for the kids. It's just their rubbish. If you've got children, you know how much they take over your house. So that is, it's filled with nothing of any interest, I'm afraid. So not a particularly good story. I've read the books and a lot of quit lit, but for some reason my mind still holds on and finds it enjoyable at the time, but not the next day. So again, I suppose this goes back to the previous question, but also what I would say is getting the most out of quit lit books isn't just about reading them, it's about applying them to your life. And I think people do this a bit with Alcohol Explained, because people quite often contact me and say, I understand it all makes sense, but I still want to drink. You can read something on an academic level and you can read something on a personal level, and you need to read this stuff and incorporate it into your own drinking and into your own life. So as I say, like for example, so in Alcohol Explained 2, I take a load of what I call idyllic drinking situations like holidays and Christmases and all the rest of it and break them down. But they're just my idyllic drinking situations. You would have your own ones and you need to do that work yourself. And even my ones aren't probably going to be exactly the same as yours in terms of type of holiday and drinking situations and all the rest of it. So you do need to put that work in. And tempting as it is with quit lit books, don't rush through them as quickly as possible because you need a bit of time to absorb it and really think about it. This is a good one. I stopped smoking 20 years ago and then began drinking gallons of coffee, but stopped as I was giving massive anxiety attacks, caffeine overdose. So I stopped that. I think this is the time when I developed a taste for red wine or anything or other alcoholic beverage. I stopped that, been nearly a year now, but I now eat stupid amounts of chocolate. What are your thoughts on this, please? So this, I think, goes back to when you're drinking and smoking as well to a degree, what you're used to doing. So what we've got here is smoking, we've got coffee, red wine, and now chocolate. What you're trying to do with all of these things is consuming something to change how you feel. Okay, so a lot of people that starts with drinking, but for you here it started with smoking, and actually it started with me with smoking because I think I became hooked on smoking years before I became properly hooked on alcohol. But what you're doing, you're constantly reaching for something to change how you feel. So you smoke cigarettes and then you think, okay, smoking's not good, I need to cut it out. So you put out a cigarette, but then you're reaching for the next thing to consume to change how you feel. So then you move on to coffee, and then you realise that's not doing what it needs to do. So you move on to wine and now chocolate. But I think what you need to do is, so you need to change that ingrained habit of trying to consume something to change how you feel. And that's what then brings us on to things like meditation, exercise, reading books. So, and again, this is deeply personal to people, but I personally like exercise, I like reading, playing games on the PlayStation, just stuff that you like doing, but try to get into stuff that is not destructive. And it's quite an easy step to take in a way. And exercise for me is a really good one because it makes you feel good, it helps you sleep more. When you're exercising a lot, you enjoy your food more because you're genuinely hungry for it. And it's almost entirely positive. And a few people have said to me, but, you know, I could see myself getting addicted to exercise. Well, I think firstly there's a difference between doing something because it's enjoyable and becoming addicted to it. And I think we use the word addiction too much. We kind of like, oh, I'm addicted to whatever it is. But there's a difference between genuinely enjoying something and being addicted to it, i.e. having a chemical dependency and you need the drug to get back to normal. So I suppose I'm addicted to exercise in a way in that I like doing it and I do it regularly. If that's the case, then do it. But as I say, there's lots of other things like meditation and yoga and all sorts. I mean, I've always meant to try these things, but just never seem to have got round to it. But just look for stuff to do. But what you're really looking for is a way of just coping with stuff and relaxing and enjoying yourself without trying to consume something to change how you feel. Because the problem is, and it shows here, it doesn't work. None of these things actually work anyway. You need to do something genuinely fulfilling to get where you need to be. So the next one is, William, I love you and your books. I often wonder if it's possible to create an Alcohol Explained book club, perhaps 1 or 2 chapters a week, with added worksheet questions pertaining to specific topics within those chapters. Then subsequent discussion regarding Q&A and interactive discussion with answers and all willing participants. Perhaps one willing person, a true Alcohol Explained success story, and also those beautiful hearts currently struggling, volunteering included, featured in the live each week. So yeah, I mean, it's a good idea. My problem is because I work full time anyway, I've got to complete a job not related to this, and I've got a young family that need a lot of time and effort. I don't really have time for this. But if someone wants to do that themselves or contact me about it, then please feel free to. And I think someone has posted on the group there is a book club where they go through Quitlit. So it's probably worth looking back through some of the posts on the Alcohol Explained group for that, because that was going on. And I think also there's the weekly Zoom meeting now. There's the Alcohol Explained Zoom meeting, which I think is a great idea. And again, I mentioned it last week, it's in the US, so I don't think the timings quite tie up for the UK. But I think it's a really good idea. So if anyone wants to volunteer, I mean, I think it is just as simple as booking a Zoom meeting and then posting it in the group. And I think the first time, the one in the US, there was 2 of them or something, and then 3 and 4, and it's kind of growing. I think it's a really good idea. But certainly you don't need me for that. You can hopefully just organise yourselves. And I think it is just a question of just putting it in the group and seeing who's interested in it. Let's see what's next. Someone's put, I'd love to see your veterans military group. So this is Sober Military, a bit more promoted and lively. I rarely see it featured, and that small group is so lovely. Perhaps a small interactive private chat for them as well. One of the reasons I haven't done that is because I wanted it to be not so much a recovery group, but just a place for ex-service men and women to just hook up, rather than really concentrating on the giving up alcohol side of it. So yeah, I've not really pushed it, but I think the problem is with groups, they're small and not much happens in them, and you need to get sort of a quorum of people, a sort of a specific number before it starts to pick up and get some traction. Yeah, it is difficult getting that number of people in, but we'll wait and see how that goes. The next question is alcohol amnesia and how to conquer it and create new patterns in the brain. So I'm assuming what you're talking about there is kind of blackouts, when you drink and you forget something. So this is all deeply theoretical, because no one really knows how memory works. But what the prevailing theory is, and in a way it's less relevant than the effect, but the theory, for what it's worth anyway, is that you have a short-term memory and a long-term memory, and when something happens, it goes into your short-term memory, so you can have a conversation with people and make sense because you know what's happened in the conversation for the last 10 minutes, but of course in 10 years' time you've no reason to recollect that. So some things are laid down in your long-term memory and some things aren't. Regular drinking can stop memories passing from short-term to long-term memory, which is that really weird thing where particularly secret drinkers find it, because they're drinking regularly. It's not enough for them necessarily to appear intoxicated, but it's enough to interrupt their memory. So they're functioning. People may not even know they're drinking, but actually then the next day they've got no memory of what happened the day before. That was happening to me. It's extremely disconcerting. If that is the case, you've got no way of getting those memories back. Okay, it's not something you can reverse, because what you've done that's gone into short-term memory and then evaporated, you've gone forever, so you can never get those memories back. But I think, and certainly my understanding is, when you stop drinking, after a few days that finishes anyway. You've got you start putting down memories from short to long term. So I don't think you have to do much. I think all you have to do is quit drinking, and your memory very quickly returns to normal, certainly in respect of that aspect. How long can I expect my body to take to heal when I was drinking pretty much every day over the past year? I think I've dealt with that, and again, that's the thing on the website about those stages you need to go through. So if you've been drinking every day for a year, you will go through that extra phase. So you will have 24 hours while the alcohol wears off. Then you'll have anything up to 3, 4, 5 days when you've got that increased anxiety. First 24 hours are always the worst, and then it tails off slowly. So just keep in mind that first 24 hours are the worst part. And then you'll hit the tired phase after that, but probably over in a few weeks. And something I would say here, because I always get this, there's always someone who jumps in and says, don't stop, you can die if you stop drinking. Okay, you can die from stopping drinking. It happens to 5% of the very heaviest drinkers, people who have been daily drinking for decades. Okay, if you are not in that category, you can stop safely. Okay, you can speak to a doctor if you want to. There's alcohol seizures. Okay, that's epilepsy. They are not fatal. People die from them because they have been drinking and then they have the epileptic fit, and that's enough to push them over the edge and kill them. Okay, again, you have to be in quite a bad way to get to that stage. Okay, what is more destructive is trying to taper, because taper is putting the drug in you that's you're trying to kick, and as soon as you start drinking, it wears off and it causes the withdrawal. Okay, so if you want to speak to a doctor, try tapering if you want, but it doesn't work for the vast majority of people because you are taking the drug that you're trying to quit. Okay, if you want an alcoholic drink and you take one, when it wears off you want one even more because you've then got the alcohol withdrawal. Some people manage to do it. Okay, so if you want to try it, do it, but it's not the easiest way of doing it. For the vast majority of people, particularly here where they've been drinking for 1 year, you will be able to stop safely, and the best and easiest way of doing it is just to stop dead. Don't try and taper. You can, as I say, you can speak to a doctor and get medication if you like, but you won't need it. And you will find that within 3 weeks you will be back to normal. Negative effects of alcohol in the brain. I think I've dealt with that as well. I mean, there's a lot of negative effects of alcohol on the brain. I think I've gone through most of the main ones there. Someone's put, do we ever just stop thinking about it completely? Not even talking about cravings or strong urges, but floating thoughts passing through. Why? So irksome. So again, on that, I think about alcohol loads, but I never think about taking a drink, and I think that's the point. If you're thinking about, I'd like a drink, then that's going to turn into a craving and you're in trouble. But I think thinking about things isn't necessarily a problem. I think it's unlikely you're not going to stop entirely thinking about drinking, because as I said, like 80-90% of the population drink. It's everywhere. You put on the TV, it's there. You put on, songs about drinking, people talking about drinking. So I don't think you can ever stop thinking about it. But I think the key is, it's what you're thinking. And going back to what I was saying before, if you're thinking, oh my God, I'm so happy I don't have to do that anymore, what on earth was I playing at? Don't worry about it, just enjoy those thoughts. I'd like to hear any thoughts about drunk dreams, feeling drunk in a dream. I've had a few and they are utterly baffling, not really a question, just curiosity about other people's experience with them. I think everyone has these, and I have them quite a lot. I go through phases with them where it seems like every night I'm drunk in my dreams. It doesn't particularly bother me. I mean, I don't think anyone really understands dreams, although people will try and interpret them and tell you all kinds of weird and wonderful things. But the fact of the matter is, human beings don't understand sleep at all anyway, let alone do we understand what kind of weird things are going on when we're dreaming about something. But I just quite enjoy it because I kind of wake up and then realise it was a dream and it's not real, and it all reality is, for me, it's a dream where I wake up feeling relieved and happy. So I don't worry about it at all, and I know lots and lots of people have drinking dreams, and again, I wouldn't worry about it. It's just your brain, I think, explores certain things when you're sleeping, and if you're stopped drinking and you used to drink a lot, I think it's natural your brain would just explore drinking again, or drinking in situations. Most of the time when I'm doing it, I kind of enter my dream and I know I've had a load of drinks and I'm thinking, what on earth have I done? Why did I do that? And then I wake up and realise I haven't. And as I say, it's always a time of great relief. Is there a point at which the prefrontal cortex goes offline and the lower brain has control, such as during an overwhelming urges? So I can't tell you what your brain does, but for my brain, so this, again, this is something I think I covered off in Alcohol Explained too, but the prevailing theory is that the human brain can think of 7 things at one time, okay? So you can think of 7 different things. Now, it probably varies from person to person, and I think, sorry, I've lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so it probably varies from person to person, but I think at the end of the day, you have to accept that there's a limited number of things that you can think about at one time. Now, when you're going through a strong urge to drink, I think 2 things happen. Firstly, there's a lot of opinion to say that a lot of things, our decisions are actually made in the subconscious. So your subconscious reaches a decision and then your conscious brain catches up. So that mechanism is where something in your brain has decided you're going to come and have a drink. So your conscious brain, you're not weighing up pros and cons rationally. You're looking for excuses. I call it the search for excuses. And that's the time where you are going to have a drink and you're just looking for a reason to do it. Okay, that's one aspect. The second aspect is, remember you can only think of 7 things. So when you're in that state, it's usually a panic. Cravings are not controlled, relaxed thinking. It's panic thinking. Okay, and if you're panicking and you've got in your mind, oh, I really want to drink, I had a really tough day, I'm miserable without it, I don't care about tomorrow, I just want to be happy tonight, that kind of stuff, pretty soon you've filled your brain up with at least 7 reasons to drink, and you've got no reasons not to drink. They're just not factoring into your thought process. So that's the kind of thinking you need to be wary of. It's that panic thinking when you're just looking for excuses and just really panicking and just filling up your brain with whatever number of things you need reasons to drink. So quick responses to go on, have one. No, thank you, I don't want one. Fairly simple. Don't forget as well, your body language will do a lot. If you're kind of stood there and people saying, go on, have one, and you sort of look down and sort of bow your head down and say, oh, no, I shouldn't really, they'll keep going at you. Not consciously, they're not trying to bully you, but that's just how it goes. If you put your head up and shoulders back and look someone in the eye and say, I don't want one, thank you, that will usually put an end to it. So when we quit drinking, we quite often feel like we're offending people and we feel nervous and we feel... and our body language, quite often we kind of go into ourselves and we start to look defensive. Sometimes you just have to act it out even if you're feeling like that. But again, you just need to say, no, I don't want one. And I find the easiest thing to say is I don't fancy one, thank you. Because if you use the I'm driving, then people will say, we'll leave your car and get a cab. If you're saying I'm going for a run in the morning, they'll say, oh, forget it, just relax and go another day. There's not really much people can say if you say I don't want one. And often a simple, straightforward answer like that kind of kills the conversation dead. Don't forget you can say things which encourage conversation and you can say things which cut conversation dead. Okay, saying I'm going for a run opens up a conversation about what you're doing, da 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 da. Saying I don't want something cuts the conversation dead. So just have a think maybe about body language and I forget what they call it now, but it's just saying something like if someone says, how are you? Fine. You're cutting the conversation dead. So try not to be open-ended with it. And also don't speak to fill a silence, because I think we all do that when we're nervous. If someone's not saying anything, our natural reaction is to fill the silence with words. So just no thank you, I don't want one, and then resist the temptation to say anything else. And I think you'll find things are a lot different. Can we talk about mindset? I'm having some difficulty with that, struggling. So I think I've touched on that really. That is something, as I said, you need to put the work into. You need to identify what you are struggling with. Do you see it as a pleasure sitting down of an evening having a drink? And in which case you need to really break that down. And start identifying what you see as so good about it. And I mean, so personally, I sit down of an evening and I just like sitting and relaxing and looking forward to a good night's sleep, which you don't get, obviously, if you're drinking, but you need to work at it a bit. The dangers and common happenings of accidental injury while drinking alcohol. Just had a friend take a nasty fall and he died from his injuries. Isn't that horrendous? Not the first fall, and of course, while totally smashed, makes one really think. I'm alcohol-free going on a year soon and I've had my share of falls, bumps and bruises while in blackout states. How lucky I feel today. Well, I would echo that. I mean, God, that's awful. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Obviously, alcohol inebriates. And the worse you are, 2 things. You lose your fear because it anaesthetises your fear and you're uncoordinated. So it's not a particularly good situation to be in at all. The next one is perhaps looking at how using sulfidine codeine to be another unhealthy way of managing feelings. I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about looking for things to consume to change how you feel. And of course, over-the-counter medicines are another way of doing that, and they're fatal. People do die from it. So yeah, try to get away from consuming things to change how you feel, because it doesn't work. It's not the best thing to do. I'm just curious to know about you and how you quit for good. Did you just quit cold turkey one day and that was it, or did it involve several aborted attempts? And when you did quit, how long was it before you noticed remarkable changes to both your physical and mental well-being? Many thanks from Japan. So I quit now 6.5 years ago, and to be honest, I probably, looking back on it now, didn't go about it the best way. I think I had a fair chunk of what is now in Alcohol Explained, which is what enabled me to quit. But I think writing the book, I realised my sort of understanding was incomplete, so it was very useful to me to write the book because I realised there was holes in my knowledge and I kind of filled those in. So yes, I suppose I did try quitting a couple of times before I finally got there, but for me, I quit for like a few weeks or months, and it didn't feel like I was giving into cravings. It kind of felt like I made a conscious decision to drink again, and again that goes back to mindset, because I was still of the mindset that I enjoyed drinking. It was a part of who I am, and I wanted to keep doing it. But the last time I did it, yes, I just quit cold turkey. That was it. I mean, I won't go into all the detail of my personal background at the time, but it was a kind of a crux time for various reasons, and it was either quit drinking or probably get divorced and lose my family. So it was a crux time. And to be honest, remarkable changes to physical and mental well-being. The strange thing was I was not in a good place for various reasons at that time. I had a lot of problems on, and those problems didn't stop when I stopped drinking. So those first few weeks and months weren't particularly happy time for me. Things did slowly improve, and looking back on it now, I was able to make those changes because I got my mental resilience and physical confidence back. I probably wouldn't have been able to turn my life around to the degree had I still been drinking. But it does, and the problem, I think this is one of the problems with drinking, is it tends to drag people down for lots of reasons. It's not just the physical side, it has an impact on relationships, finances, lots of things. And when you quit drinking, that's great, but all those other problems don't go away immediately. So a lot of the time, and I found this, probably my mental physical well-being probably bounced back fairly quickly, but it just didn't feel like life improved massively because of all the other things I was contending with at the time. So it is a very personal journey. But going back to what I said before, your physical and mental well-being should be back to where it is probably after, a month, because even in the worst case, after about 3 weeks, you should be back, your brain chemistry should be back to normal, and then you should start sleeping properly. And that's quite often people find it's really noticeable, because they wake up, the first few days they're feeling really anxious, they don't sleep properly, they're tired, then they go through the really tired period, and every time their alarm goes off they have to drag themselves out of bed, and they feel woolly-headed all day. And there's suddenly a day where they just wake up and they feel better than they have done in years, and all that is getting back to normal brain chemistry and having a good night's sleep, which is what you have all the time when you stop drinking. It's the most phenomenal feeling, and that's really what I'm trying to sell to people who are struggling, is just it's so worth trying to get there. What are healthy ways we can get control of the urge to drink, especially in social situations? So again, that goes to mindset, because if you don't want something, there's no urge to drink it. So again, you need to see things for as they are. One of the big things, I think this problem in social situations, is envying the drinkers because they all get to do this really fun thing. Again, I don't see it that way anymore, because when I see people drinking, I see two things. Well, I see three things really. One, I see it for what it is. So I see a cancerous poison, a sedative, that's mixed with loads of refined sugar, and that's how it's consumed. So it doesn't look particularly attractive to me anyway. I see people, what I used to do was see them tossing and turning all night and lying awake, which is what everyone does. I don't care whether they're a normal drinker, a problem drinker. I don't care whether they only drink once or twice a week. And I don't care if at the social occasion they're only having one or two drinks. They've ruined their night's sleep by drinking. Okay. And that's how I see it. So I don't envy them. And more recently, what I've started to think of as well is even when you're drinking, your heart rate goes up massively because as your brain's trying to deal with the alcohol, it releases stimulants and that puts your heart rate up. When your heart rate goes up, you feel tired and heavy and you want to sit down. That's your brain telling you your heart rate's too high, sit down. It does all of those things to people. So I see that when I see people drinking, I don't envy them and I don't want a part of it anymore. And if you get to that stage, you don't have an urge to drink. So you're not controlling an urge. You just don't have an urge. See how we're doing. Sorry, yeah, it's a bit of a long one today. My brother died of ketoacidosis. He was high on the alcohol abuse spectrum, using daily for years, except when in jail. He had PTSD from being in Afghanistan and he didn't fully recover before he passed. Do you have knowledge of the connection between SUD, absence of nutrients, and how our bodies can quickly enter into ketoacidosis? He died alone in a national park bedroom, sick and confused in 2016. That's terrible. That's the trouble. I mean, I served in Iraq, and Afghanistan was kicking off while I was out there, and a few of the people I was with did back-to-back tours, literally left Iraq and went straight out to Afghanistan. I mean, Iraq was unpleasant, but Afghanistan was worse from what I heard. It was really quite difficult out there. So yeah, it's terrible, to be honest. And I'm very sorry to hear that. And I don't think he's the only one, frankly. But I mean, going back to the question, so my area of expertise, for what it's worth, is how alcohol affects us and becomes addictive. I don't really know much about this. I think ketoacidosis is something to do with diabetes, okay, which is a whole other issue. Now, alcohol is addictive, and we consume it by drinking it, but in its neat form, it's impossible to drink. It's so repulsive, it's so poisonous, our body reacts to it and won't let us consume it. So if you sniff it, it makes your eyes water, and if you drink it, you will vomit. So what we do is we mix it in water and put loads of sugar and refined sugar in it, and loads of different flavours, like wine has got grape juice in it and all these different flavours, and when we drink spirits we put mixers in with them and all the rest of it. But one of the main features is what we mix it with is refined sugar. So how sugar works is there's natural sugar and there's refined sugar. So as human beings, we're designed to eat fruit. It's a natural part of our diet and it contains natural sugar. Now, when you eat some natural sugar, your body realises that there's sugar going into your bloodstream and it releases insulin. And what insulin does, it remains in your bloodstream for, I don't know, an hour or so, let's say. And it's in there and it removes the sugar. And what it does is it turns the sugar into something that your organs and your cells can actually use. So that's how you eat sugar. And it's removed from your bloodstream and used. The problem is that natural sugar goes into your system quite slowly, whereas refined sugar goes in all at once. So your body's used to the slow release natural sugar. Refined sugar goes in all at once, so it releases loads of insulin to remove the sugar from your bloodstream. But of course the sugar all disappears too quickly because it's not going in long term. So the insulin does too much of it, takes out too much sugar, and that's when you get that sugar rush followed by the sugar low, because all your sugar goes out your bloodstream. Now the problem is, if you do this all the time, your body gets completely confused and just stops producing insulin. It just gives up. The whole thing is a bad job. So the problem is, when you drink a lot, you're consuming huge amounts of refined sugar and you're messing your body up absolutely phenomenally from an insulin perspective. And of course, that causes diabetes. And I think this is what that ketoacidosis is. It's to do with diabetes. And I say I'm not an expert, but that's it. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's terrible because when people think of alcohol, they think of your liver packing up. In actual fact, the biggest killer with alcohol is cardiovascular, because every time you have an alcoholic drink, your heart rate goes up. And when your heart rate goes up without exercising, it's weakening your heart, and destroying your fitness. And again, I think it's on the website, this, if you want to read out an article on alcohol and fitness. But I don't care if you're only having one alcoholic drink a week, it's still doing that. It's still damaging your heart. So yeah, there's that aspect of it, and also this, because don't forget, every time you drink an alcoholic drink, you're having a massive rush of refined sugar that you just don't need, and that's messing up your whole insulin thing internally as well. So horrible. I'm very sorry to hear that. Next one, I always benefit from listening to your talks. I'm about to enter a week with more triggers than normal and would like to feel more prepared. My family is camping on the estate of a winery in the south of France. I'm interested in preparing for prolonged exposure to triggers. I feel that being straightforward from the beginning with our friends is the best way to approach the situation, obviously. I'm wondering if anyone has dealt with actually hurting or offending people with the subject of not drinking. The couple who owns the winery are our close friends, and the wine is his life, work, and passion. For the record, this was the only vacation we could feasibly afford since we'd be visiting friends. Thank you. So that's a brilliant question. I think there's a few points there. So I would say, yes, being straightforward from the beginning is the best way to approach it. Just tell them you're not drinking, and leave it at that. And obviously that, if they're friends, you probably don't need to do what I was talking about before, which is, cutting the conversation dead and all the rest of it. You can just tell them you're not drinking. Think beforehand about how much information you want to give them. You don't say yourself whether you've had a massive problem with alcohol or actually you were just a grey area drinker who's got sick to the back teeth of the whole miserable cycle. But you can tell them what information you like. You can be, if you've got a serious problem, you can tell them that. Or if you haven't, don't. Just say, I'm not drinking, I'm taking a break from alcohol. But I think what is really interesting here, actually hurting or offending people with the subject of not drinking, because I think we all do that. I think we think we're offending people by not drinking with them, which is a really bizarre thing if you think about it, because if you were hosting a party and someone went outside for a cigarette and you didn't smoke, you wouldn't be expected to go and have a cigarette with them, would you? People don't generally get offended if you're not drinking. And how I always say it is, think about when you've been drinking and someone else wasn't. I'm guilty of this as everyone else, but if someone's not drinking, trying to provoke them into having a drink. But seriously, I was never offended by someone not drinking. As long as I had my alcohol, I was fairly happy. And if someone else wasn't drinking, it didn't bother me one way or another. So I think we tend to think we're offending people by not drinking, but the fact of the matter is, I don't think it does offend most people, and if it does, then too bad, because you decide what goes in your body, and if you want to break from alcohol, if you want to stop drinking, then that's absolutely your prerogative. So I would say, do that, absolutely, be upfront with them from the very start, because that's the easiest way of dealing with it. And yeah, don't think you're offending them, because they probably won't be offended. I think if you're just upfront with them, it will be absolutely fine. And then try and do what I was suggesting before about just seeing it for what it is. If this chap who owns it is his life's work and passion, then you'll have a very different view of it than he does. But again, that doesn't mean you can't be friends and you can't go and enjoy each other's company. So just try it that way might be helpful. Someone said, I still have some tiredness, alcohol-free day 40. I still walk, hike, golf, but I'm wanting to start up running and don't seem to have the energy for that. And I'm sleeping better, so I don't think it's that. When is this tiredness going to take a hike? So by day 40, you should be back to normal sleep-wise, okay, which suggests it might not be the alcohol that's causing the tiredness. So there may be some very specific things that are causing you to be tired. And again, I think I spoke about some of them, so eating late or caffeine or all the rest of it. There could be something else. It might be worth going to your doctor, because I know there's lots of things that can cause you to feel tired. You might have, low iron or, something like that. So it may be alcohol related. I think there is a tendency when you drink a lot and you stop drinking, everything's related to alcohol, but it might not be. There might be something else you need to do. So yeah, I mean, it's impossible to pin it down, but if it's continuing after 40 days, I would say maybe go to the doctor, but do watch out just for those additional points about not eating too late, and maybe cutting out caffeine and nicotine later in the day if you smoke. The next one's how to stay committed. When I first read your book, I was all in and it was easy. Then I had heard I should try naltrexone. I thought, well, maybe this is just a little extra insurance that I wouldn't drink, but you have to drink with it to make it work, and totally undid everything. Now I can't seem to get back on track. So this kind of brings me back to a post I did fairly recently, because I was in the group and someone, so when you join the group, you have to say either you've read the books or you at least familiarise yourself with what's on the website. So then at least people in the group have some kind of familiarity with the approach. But what worried me is someone had come in and obviously wasn't sure what they were doing and said, basically, what do I do? And the first 5 or 6 people had gone and said to them, go and buy this drug, that drug or the other, which I don't think is a particularly positive way of dealing with things. So my understanding of these things is you take it, and it then, when you drink, you don't enjoy drinking, and the idea is you keep drinking and you kind of reverse the conditioning that alcohol is enjoyable. There's so many things wrong with that, and I completely appreciate that people will say, well, you need to do whatever it takes to stop, but I would say this should be an absolute last resort, because taking a drug to give up a drug doesn't strike me as the most sensible thing to do. And as I've talked about already, the vast majority of the problem is our beliefs about alcohol, and they can be changed by thought processes and not having to take drugs. The other thing with this is my understanding of it. I've never tried it. I know a lot of people that tried it, and it makes them feel kind of strange anyway, so it's not a particularly good thing to do. Going back to what I was saying, the main benefit of sobriety is getting back to a normal sleeping pattern and brain chemistry. You're not going to do that if you're taking a different drug. So I genuinely wonder if people who go through all this are actually getting back to where they need to be, which is sleeping well and waking up feeling absolutely fantastic, because I don't know that people necessarily do that when they're taking these drugs that supposedly stop them from drinking. So I've never taken them. So try them if you want them, but I would say, why would you not try an approach that doesn't require you to take a drug before doing that, and make that a last resort? There is no easy pill you can pop, because don't forget, there's the physical side to addiction, but the main side is psychological. It's wanting something because you believe you need it to cope with the tough times, or the difficult things, or to celebrate, or to socialise. Okay, I don't know how a pill is going to change that dynamic, genuinely. And I can kind of see the argument between, but if you're drinking and not enjoying it, you can kind of reverse that. But I genuinely don't understand. So you do that to what end? To just keep taking the drug and keep drinking, but not enjoying it. So why would you even do that? Or to cut the drug out then and drink normally, but then are you not back to where you were to begin with? Because then presumably you start enjoying alcohol, and get addicted to it again. So I don't quite understand what the long-term idea is with this, because I don't think it's going to change your core beliefs about alcohol, that it's fun, that you need it to socialise. And I don't really understand where people go with it. Again, if you want to try it, do, but it's really not part of my approach. And I dare say there are groups out there on Facebook and all over the place that you can join if that's your interest and you believe that will be useful. But that isn't something I would advocate at all. Certainly not as a first stop thing. I think there's many, many other ways you should be doing it. In terms of how to get back on track, that's a very sad story, because things don't often work as well the second time round. So the dynamic often with Alcohol Explained and other Quit Lit books as well is you read them and it gives you a fresh new perspective and you're all geared up to go for it. And then if you start drinking again, it doesn't work so well the second time, because it's not giving you a fresh perspective. You already know about it. So it's still there as a sort of a factual thing, but it removes that kind of springboard effect. And on the website, under my blog posts, if you scroll back through them, I think there's a blog post called something like "Why It's Not So Effective the Second Time Round." It might be worth reading that, because there's a huge dynamic about, I think it's worth giving yourself a bit of a run up. So the usual dynamic is people stop drink when they want to stop drinking. They wake up feeling awful and vow they're going to stop, and then they start fantasizing about having a drink, and then they have one, and that's just an ongoing thing. So it's worth actually taking a few days and putting a date in maybe a week's time or something, and working up to it. There's a lot. I would talk about it now, but I think I've been going on for quite a long time, and I need to wrap up. But have a look on the website under the post, and I can't remember when it was, but it was in the last 4 or 5 blog posts, about why it's not so effective the second time round. And I kind of talk about the dynamic and just a new way maybe of trying to stop drinking, to give yourself that bit of a run up. I think that's pretty much it, to be honest. Anyway, someone said about how to catch up on the live chat. So all these videos are on the group anyway, but then I put them on my YouTube channel if anyone's interested, so you can watch them there. Complacency and how to combat it. That again comes back to mindset, and of course it comes back to fading effect bias and ambition, which are the 2 ways in which, as time passes, we tend to look back on things more favourably. So staying close to the group is a good one, because you see the reality of the amount of people that are struggling to stop. And this is again a reason why I let people, some groups don't let people post when they've been drinking, but I let people post when they've been drinking, because it shows you the reality. When people post when they're drinking, they're not happy, and that's what people need to get away from. Drinking is not borrowing happiness from tomorrow, because drinking doesn't make you happy. Even when you're drinking, you feel miserable, more miserable than if you weren't drinking. And I think that's one of the key points to get. When you first have a drink, it can anaesthetise feelings of anxiety and unhappiness, so it gives you a little boost. But in a very short space of time, you're more miserable than when you started. And I'm not talking long term, I'm still talking about an hour into it. So I think that's why I let people post, for what it's worth, because you look at it and think, oh, horrible. How to do mindfulness, or how to meditate, or how to manage work COVID-related anxiety. So as I say, I do it by exercise, and I like to sit down with books and stick games on the PlayStation and stuff like that. Mindfulness and meditation, I've never done meditation, so I can't advise, but there's a lot of people out there who can advise on meditation. And in fact, on the sober sessions, I'm trying to remember the name now, there was someone on who was talking about meditation, and she'd done a really good meditation video, like for beginners. So I'll try and dig that out and post it under the comments. But yeah, I mean, I can't really comment too much on that. But there's a lot out there on meditation, I think, and it's supposed to be very useful. The last question, you'll be pleased to hear, nearly an hour. Do you have any do's and don'ts for the first year? Not particularly, no, I don't think so. One of the mistakes I made was when I quit drinking. I almost thought, I kind of just didn't expect, and again, it goes back to, there was a lot going on at that time anyway, but I kind of quit expecting to have a few tough months ahead. But I think you need to keep positive, and I think one of the key things for a lot of people is socialising. And with socialising, when you're relaxed and happy and you socialise, you get an endorphin rush, and that's a good feeling. Alcohol isn't a good feeling, but a lot of time when we're drinking, we're socialising anyway, so the alcohol high is in fact just an endorphin high. So what I would say is, try to go out and enjoy yourself, because you start getting that endorphin buzz. It's really tempting when you quit drinking to think, I can't be bothered to go out, I don't like socialising, if I'm not drinking I don't want to do it, and that's what I did. I just said to myself, I'm quite introverted, I don't like socialising, the only part of socialising I ever enjoyed was the drinking part of it, so I'm going to avoid socialising. But I found actually, if you go out and just try and relax and enjoy yourself, you start to find that you really do kind of get that endorphin rush. And of course, when you do it once or twice, it becomes easier and easier because you start to think, oh wow, I can enjoy this. So the next time you go, you're more relaxed and you're more expecting to enjoy yourself. And you can make that happen really quickly. You can sit at home and avoid it and then turn up when you have to and think, I'm going to hate this, and you'll be miserable. Or you can just go out there. I mean, it's different at the moment because we're still partially in lockdown. But try to put yourself out there a bit. Try and go out and enjoy life and enjoy it, because it just makes things better generally. I'm going to have to call it a day there. It's a straight hour, that one, so that was quite a long one. Everyone have a good weekend. I hope that was useful. And I'll probably post Thursday next week about doing another one. And it will probably be about the same time, to be honest, because I'm struggling to get them done during the day at the moment. So have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.